Hey guys, in this episode we are going to be talking about the most notorious word in real estate, which is the bid war. And what does it mean to you as a buyer? What does it mean to you as a seller? And what can a lender do to help? So we'll see you on the other side.
Welcome back to Lovin the Lakeshore. We are on episode number 7. We are going to talk over some really informational heavy stuff today. So I would highly recommend getting a pen and paper if you are thinking about selling your house or buying a house, because this is going to be extremely important information for you to know along the way. So we're going to talk about bidding wars. Brian, tell me a little bit about sellers, what they're looking for, what's most important right now in this crazy market.
Sellers, just to kind of keep things straight and categorize things, are out for themselves. They are not out for buyers, right?
Right.
So if you're a seller in this transaction and you're looking at offers, you're looking for the best terms available for yourself.
Absolutely.
So we always say, number one, they're looking at your financing terms or cash terms as the most probable to get to closing. So when we say those terms and it goes out your glass over and don't know what that means, there's tons of buyers in the market that are out trying to purchase the property with as little down as possible.
Yeah.
3% down, 5% down, in some cases 0 down, depending on the government loan program they're taking on. So sellers are looking for who's bringing the most money to the party, and if they're paying cash fully, what those terms look like. So that's number one. Number two, the most likely to close is kind of the same category, because the money you bring to closing also tells a snapshot picture of who you are as a buyer.
Yes.
If you're putting a little bit down on a purchase, the seller's perception is if anything happens in your life, if you lose a job, your car breaks down, anything that happens could cause you not to make it to the closing table. Yeah. So they don't want to take a risk unless there's, a reason to, such as a high price. But then that also couples with another problem, appraisal. Will the home appraise if that buyer with little down payment shoots the moon on price to win? Yes. So that's just a little bit about what the seller's thinking from their perspective. So buyers are coming in and they're going, okay, what do we need to do to win?
I want to win. I want this house.
So you're seeing it on purchase agreements, left and right. Buyers are coming in, and us agents are advising buyers, and it's tough because 5 years ago we were advising buyers different than we're today. But we're advising buyers that you have to remove some contingencies in order to win.
No concessions.
Yep. Concessions. If you're going to get a loan and you're asking the seller to pay some of your loan fees, that's really difficult to have a seller do for you.
Yeah.
And then also just dealing with the fact that the standard inspection of a home, that's a basic for a buyer, right?
Yes.
And in this new market, when there's 10 people in a bid war trying to beat out the competition, and one of them's a contractor who knows everything there is to know about a house, and he pulls the inspection back, how favorable does that look to a seller when they see that offer has no home inspection? Yeah. So it's on its way to closing short of an appraisal. But if it's a cash buyer with no home inspection, let's say it's an investor, no emotion from that buyer just wants to buy a house. So a seller will look at that way more favorably.
For sure.
So we're stuck as agents kind of trying to protect your buyers, and yet the buyers want us to win for them.
For sure.
And then how do we get them to win? We have to pull out contingencies. So the second contingency is the appraisal. Yeah. Right? If they're going to get a loan and they need an appraisal, that protective clause in the purchase agreement is an appraisal. Well, you have to sometimes walk that back as well. So if there's multiple offers on a property and you use that appraisal and you say the buyer has sufficient funds to cover the appraisal should home under appraise, what does that tell a seller? It tells a seller you're virtually cash, right? Because you have sufficient funds to buy without that appraisal being a hindrance.
Yes, and that you're still, even if it comes in short, you still see the value in the property and you're moving forward anyways.
And remember, if you think about it as a buyer, and a buyer is currently renting, and they're renting for $1,250 a month, and they're looking at the mortgage payment for this house at $275 is X dollars a month. If that spread is pretty close, they will take that risk. Yeah. Because they'll even tell me, Brian, it's worth, if the home is, let's say, $15,000 less valuable than what I just bid to purchase it for, it's worth it because every month I'm giving my money to the landlord and
right.
I need to
it's
stop
going
doing that.
Nothing. Yes.
So that's just kind of how a buyer's justifying that. And then us agents are sitting back here kind of advising, but then also in some cases taking orders.
Yeah.
Buyers that have been shopping for a year or two are to the point where they're just like, we just need to buy a house.
Yes, we'll write in all of
Can we just get a house, Brian?
Yes.
So we have to make that happen for them. So from the lender's perspective, what are you seeing in the market, Molly?
So, of course, one thing that helps us stand out on the buyer side of things is using a local lender is so important. For one, of course, we have a local appraiser pool. As you know, with those appraisal gaps, you want it to come in at value. And we have such a unique growing market over here. Values are increasing over 10% per year. So it's important to have somebody local that understands, especially those waterfront properties. If we have an appraiser from Kalamazoo that's never touched foot in the Grand Haven, Ottawa County, Muskegon area, they're like, oh, I don't know. What does it look like? Try to find some comps, and that can sometimes be tough. So using the appraisers that know, and at least a pool, they see our name, and typically, because we don't get to pick them, they see our name, they're like, oh yeah, we know this lender, they're reputable, boom, let's pick that up. It's going to be a smooth transaction.
To kind of even dumb that down even more, what does that mean? Because you're saying local appraisers, local inspectors. That means that the appraiser sometimes lives in Spring Lake.
Yeah.
And is going to be doing an appraisal on a house in Spring Lake. They know that market like the back of their hand because they live here versus somebody coming from Kalamazoo or somebody coming from Detroit area. And they're just picking up a one-off appraisal over here and on the west side of the state, and they don't have the history and knowledge that comes from living in a community.
For sure.
And lenders can never pick the appraiser they use. An appraisal management company is still sourced by the lending institution to bring an appraiser out to the property.
Right.
But you find that local appraisers that are in this market, when they see Molly's request go in, or a local lender's request come in for an appraisal, if they've got a history of working with that lending institution, they'll pick them up quicker.
I think one of the biggest things right now is knowing your max budget.
Correct.
Because of these appraisal gaps, we've had people write like infinite appraisal gaps, and then an offer comes in $50,000 over, and they're like, I don't actually want to go that high. Yeah. So that's where we help too, like setting up a budget. What's your max payment, and what does that mean for a max purchase price? So you can tell Brian, I wanted to have an escalation clause, but I am not going over $450. Not a penny over, because that's the max of my budget. Then Brian can help, represent you the best way and keep you within your comfort boundaries.
And to explain the escalation clause, because that might be a lost term to somebody that's sitting here watching this video, an escalation clause is one other tool that buyers are using to beat out other offers, because they don't want to just put a number in that is the list price. They want to put in a list price offer, but we will meet and exceed all competing offers up to X price. So that's an escalation clause. So in some cases, I've written infinity and beyond. It's like I call it the Buzz Lightyear escalation clause.
Buzz Lightyear.
But that's what it does.
Yeah.
It allows the buyer to kind of fit the mold of, I don't want to lose this by $5,000 to anybody.
Right.
Or I don't want to lose this. I'll spend $1,000 over any competing offer. And so that's another tool that buyers are using to pull out all the stops to win right now, which is, it's unique. But yes, as an agent, we have to protect our buyers to make sure they're not getting too emotional just to win when we feel like it's a property that might not ever support that number.
For sure.
So.
Well, we hope that you find all this information extremely valuable. And if you are thinking of selling or buying and want some advice and need some help getting set up with pre-approval, reach out to myself or Brian. We'd be happy to help.
Have a good one. See you guys.
See you next time.